Relax, I'm not here to ruin your big night. I'm here to show you who already did.
The crystal chandelier at Pemberton's restaurant cast shadows across the white tablecloth as I sat there in my work clothes, feeling every judgmental stare from Emily's family. My wife had insisted I come straight from the job site, claiming there wasn't time to change. Now I understood why. Smith still hasn't learned to dress appropriately, Franklin Waters announced to the table, his voice carrying that particular brand of old money condescension that made my jaw clench. My father-in-law adjusted his silk tie and smiled at the assembled lawyers, doctors, and trust fund babies surrounding us. He never made it to college, just fixes air conditioners. Emily sat beside me, her perfectly manicured fingers wrapped around a wine glass, saying nothing. Not one damn word in my defense. The silence stretched like a noose around my neck. Actually, Franklin, a voice interrupted from across the restaurant. Marcus Pemberton himself, the owner, approached our table with a knowing smile. I think you should know that Smith here isn't just any HVAC technician. Franklin's eyebrows raised expectantly, probably thinking Marcus was about to pile on more humiliation. Smith Turner owns Northeast Climate Solutions, Marcus continued, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet dining room. His company installed and maintains the heating and cooling systems in half the commercial buildings in this state, including this restaurant. In fact, I believe his net worth exceeds most everyone at this table. The silence that followed was deafening. Franklin's face went through several shades of red before settling on a sickly pale. The lawyers suddenly found their plates fascinating. Emily's grip on her wine glass tightened until I thought it might shatter. I stood up slowly, brushing imaginary dust off my work shirt. The system's running perfectly tonight, Marcus. Thanks for asking. I looked directly at Franklin, whose mouth was opening and closing like a fish out of water. Enjoy your meal, everyone. Franklin, the check's on me tonight. Consider it a professional courtesy. I walked out of that restaurant with my head high, but inside something fundamental had shifted. Not because of Franklin's insults, I'd heard worse from better men, but because Emily had sat there silent, letting it happen. Worse, she'd orchestrated it. The drive home was quiet. Emily stared out the passenger window, her reflection ghost-like in the glass. When we pulled into our driveway, the driveway of the house I'd bought and paid for, she finally spoke. You humiliated my father. I turned off the engine and looked at her. Really looked. When had her face become so cold? I humiliated him? Emily, he just spent 20 minutes telling a room full of people that I'm some kind of failure. You made him look like a fool in front of his friends. He made himself look like a fool. I just existed. She slammed the car door and stormed into the house. I followed, already knowing this conversation was heading somewhere dark. You should apologize, she said, spinning around in our foyer. And you should fix the heating system at the salon for free, as a gesture. A gesture? I couldn't help but laugh. Emily, I've already sunk $40,000 into that salon of yours. The heating system works fine. It's not about the money, Smith. It's about respect. You're right, it is about respect. I looked around our home, the crown molding I'd paid for, the hardwood floors, the custom kitchen, and I'm not getting any. That's when she hit me, an open-handed slap that echoed through the house like a fire shot. We both stood there, shocked. In 8 years of marriage, she'd never raised a hand to me. You're a selfish coward, she hissed. You've always been jealous of my family's class, their education, their connections. You can't stand that you'll always be blue-collar trash, no matter how much money you make. The words hit harder than the slap, because somewhere, buried deep, I'd wondered if she was right, if all the success in the world couldn't change where I came from. But looking at her face, twisted with contempt, I realized something else. She'd always felt this way. The mask had just finally slipped. I'm going to stay at the shop tonight, I said quietly. We'll talk when you've cooled down. Don't bother coming back, she spat. I'm done pretending this marriage works. I packed a bag in silence while she watched from the bedroom doorway, arms crossed, face set in stone. As I headed for the door, I turned back one last time. You know what, Emily? You're right about one thing. I am blue collar, but that means when something's broken, I fix it. And this marriage, it's been broken for a long time. I drove to my office that night and slept on the couch in my conference room, staring at the ceiling and wondering how I'd missed the signs. How long had she been planning this? How long had I been the fool? By morning, I'd made my decision. If Emily wanted to end this marriage, I wouldn't fight her, but I sure as hell wasn't going to make it easy. 3 days later, I was sitting in my lawyer's office, watching Janet Morrison review the papers I'd brought her. Janet was sharp, ruthless, and had a reputation for taking wealthy men to the cleaners in divorce proceedings. Today, she was working for me. You want to file for divorce and claim half of the salon? Janet looked up from the documents. Smith, I have to ask, are you sure about this? Emily's going to fight you tooth and nail. I'm sure. I have documentation of every penny I put into that business. $40,000 in startup costs, another $20,000 in equipment. Plus, I've been paying the rent on the building for 2 years. Janet nodded, making notes. What about the house? Joint ownership, but I made the down payment and I've been covering the mortgage. I want her bought out or the house sold. This is going to get ugly. It already is ugly. I'm just making it legal. The papers were filed that afternoon. By evening, Emily was exhaling up my phone with calls I didn't answer and texts I didn't read. I was busy with something else entirely, sitting in my truck across the street from the salon, watching. Emily's salon and spa was located in a converted Victorian house on Main Street. All glass and chrome inside, old world charm outside. I'd fallen in love with the building the moment Emily showed it to me. Now, watching through the large front windows, I was falling out of love with everything else. Emily was there, along with her business partner, Linda Hartwell. Linda was one of those women who made cattiness an art form. All fake smiles and sharp edges. They were moving around the salon, gesturing animatedly, clearly upset about something. Probably the divorce papers. At 8:30, a black BMW pulled up. I recognized the car immediately. It belonged to Brad Vance, who owned the CrossFit gym down the street. Brad was everything I wasn't. Tall, lean, perfectly groomed, and completely full of himself. He'd been sniffing around Emily for months at various town events, always ready with a compliment about her hair or her dress. I watched him walk into the salon like he owned the place. Through the window, I saw Emily's face light up when she saw him. Linda discreetly disappeared into the back room. For the next hour, I sat there, watching my wife laugh and flirt with another man in the business I'd helped her build. When Brad finally left, he kissed her goodbye. Not on the cheek, on the mouth. A long, lingering kiss that told me everything I needed to know. Well, I'll be damned, I muttered, starting my truck. Guess the salon's not the only thing she's having serviced. The next morning, I called Janet. I need you to add cheating to the divorce petition, I said without preamble. You have proof? I will. Smith, be careful. Don't do anything that could compromise the case. Don't worry. I'm very good at my job, and my job involves getting into places other people can't reach. That afternoon, I paid a visit to the salon. Emily was with a client, but Linda was free, and she greeted me with all the warmth of a rattlesnake. Smith, I heard about the divorce. Such a shame. Yeah, well, things happen. I looked around the salon, noting the vents, the ductwork, the layout I knew by heart. I'm just here to check the heating system. Want to make sure everything's running smoothly before winter hits. Linda's eyes narrowed. Emily said you were being difficult about maintenance. Emily said a lot of things. But this is still partly my business until the divorce is final, and I take care of my investments. I spent 20 minutes doing actual maintenance work, but also installing something Emily and Linda would never notice. A small digital recorder, about the size of a quarter, tucked deep inside the return air vent in the main salon area. The kind of device that could record for days and transmit to my phone. All set, I announced, packing up my tools. System should run perfectly. Linda watched me leave with suspicious eyes, but she couldn't prove anything. After all, I was just doing my job. That evening, I drove to Murphy's Tavern, the kind of blue-collar bar where everyone knew everyone and gossip flowed as freely as the beer. My old friend Ray Martinez was holding court at his usual stool, regaling anyone who'd listen with stories from his construction crew. Smith! Ray raised his beer when he saw me. Heard you and Emily are calling it quits. Sorry, man. Thanks. I ordered a beer and settled in beside him. It's been coming for a while. Yeah, well, maybe it's for the best, said Tommy, the bartender, wiping down glasses. No offense, but your wife's been spending a lot of time with that gym guy lately. A lot of people noticed. Brad Vance? I kept my voice neutral. That's the one. They've been real cozy at the coffee shop, the bookstore, all over town. Linda's been covering for them, making excuses. Ray leaned closer. Tommy's being polite. They've been all over each other for months. Half the town's been waiting for you to catch on. I took a long pull of my beer, letting that sink in. Well, now I have. What are you going to do about it? I smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. I'm going to let them dig their own graves. Then I'm going to hand them the shovels. The recorder I'd planted in the salon was a gold mine. For 3 days, I listened to Emily and Linda trash talk me, discuss strategy for the divorce, and most importantly, plan their next moves with Brad. He's being such a coward about the money. Emily's voice came through crystal clear on my phone as I sat in my office. $40,000, like, that's some huge fortune. Can't you just pay him off and be done with it? Linda asked. With what? The salon's barely breaking even, and he knows it. He's trying to ruin me. What does Brad think? There was a pause. Then Emily's voice softer now. Brad thinks I should fight it. He says Smith's just trying to intimidate me because he knows about us. How much does he know? I don't think he knows anything for sure. But Brad's worried. If this gets messy, it could hurt his business too. You know how this town talks. I smiled grimly. They had no idea how much this town talked, or how carefully I was listening. That evening, I drove to CrossFit Pinnacle, Brad's gym. It was housed in a converted warehouse on the industrial side of town, all concrete and steel and motivational posters. Through the windows, I could see Brad training a client, his muscles straining against a tight tank top, his perfectly styled hair not moving despite the workout. I waited in my truck until closing time. At 9 o'clock, Brad emerged alone, keys jingling as he locked up. His prized possession, a restored 1977 Mustang in cherry red, sat in the parking lot like a beacon. I waited until he'd driven away, then got out of my truck and walked over to where his car had been parked. The asphalt was still warm from the engine. I knelt down and examined the ground, noting the slight oil stain, the tire marks, the exact position where he always parked. Then I got back in my truck and went home. Not to the house I'd shared with Emily, she'd changed the locks, but to the small apartment I'd rented above my office. It wasn't much, but it was mine. The next morning, I received a call from Janet. Emily's lawyer wants to meet, she said. They're proposing a settlement. What kind of settlement? They'll give you $20,000 for your investment in the salon and let you keep the house if you agree not to pursue cheating charges. I laughed. Counteroffer. I want my full $40,000 back, half the current value of the salon, and Emily can buy me out of the house at fair market value, and I'm still pursuing cheating. Smith, that's going to cost her almost $100,000. She doesn't have that kind of money. Then she shouldn't have cheated on me. That afternoon, I paid another visit to Murphy's Tavern. Ray was there, along with half the construction crew and a handful of other regulars. The conversation turned, as it always did, to local gossip. You hear about the drama at Emily's salon? Asked Mike, one of Ray's guys. Apparently, there was a screaming match yesterday between Emily and some supplier who wants his money. Money troubles? I asked innocently. Sounds like it. My wife goes there for her hair, and she said Emily looks stressed as hell. Keep having hushed phone conversations, stepping outside to take calls. Ray nudged me. Maybe that's why she's fighting the divorce so hard. Can't afford to pay you back. Maybe, I agreed, but I knew better. Emily wasn't just stressed about money. She was stressed about getting caught. That evening, I decided to test a theory. I drove to the salon just after closing time and parked where I could see both the front and back entrances. Sure enough, at 8:30, Brad's BMW pulled into the alley behind the building. I gave them 10 minutes, then called the salon's main number from my cell phone. It rang and rang before going to voicemail. I hung up and called again. This time, Emily answered, slightly breathless. Emily's salon, we're closed. Hi, honey, it's me. The silence on the other end was deafening. What do you want, Smith? Just wanted to let you know I'll be by tomorrow to collect some of my tools from the basement. Hope that's not inconvenient. Yes, that's fine. Just call first. Will do. Oh, and Emily, you might want to check the heating system. I think there might be a problem with the airflow. I hung up and watched through my binoculars as lights started moving around inside the salon. 20 minutes later, Brad's car pulled out of the alley, and Emily's car followed shortly after. The next morning, I found my recorder on the floor beneath the vent, obviously discovered and removed. But it didn't matter. I had everything I needed. The divorce hearing was scheduled for a cold Tuesday morning in November. The courthouse was one of those imposing brick buildings that made everyone who entered feel small and judged. I arrived early, wearing my best suit and carrying a briefcase full of documentation. Emily arrived with her lawyer, a sharp-dressed woman named Patricia Wells, who specialized in protecting wealthy wives from their vindictive husbands. Emily looked nervous but determined, her hair perfect, her makeup flawless. She'd dressed for battle. Franklin Waters was there too, sitting in the gallery like some kind of disapproving patriarch. He'd probably paid for Emily's lawyer, which meant he had a financial interest in the outcome. Janet Morrison looked like she was ready to take prisoners. She'd spent weeks preparing for this hearing, and she'd warned me that it was going to get ugly. All rise for the Honorable Judge Margaret Chen. Judge Chen was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who'd seen every kind of marital drama imaginable. She reviewed our case file with the weary expression of someone who'd heard it all before. This is a divorce proceeding with contested property division and allegations of cheating, she began. Mr. Morrison, you may present your client's case. Janet stood up and launched into a methodical presentation of my financial contributions to the salon, complete with bank records, receipts, and contracts. She painted a picture of a hardworking husband who'd supported his wife's business dreams only to be betrayed and discarded. Your Honor, Mr. Turner invested over $60,000 in his wife's business venture, including startup costs, equipment, and ongoing operational expenses. He has documentation for every expenditure. Patricia Wells objected frequently, trying to characterize my investments as gifts rather than business expenses. But Janet was prepared for every objection, every attempt to muddy the waters. Then came the testimony phase. I took the stand first, walking through the timeline of my marriage, my financial contributions, and the breakdown of our relationship. I kept my voice steady and professional, sticking to facts rather than emotions. Mr. Turner, Janet asked, did there come a time when you suspected your wife was having an extramarital affair? Yes, I observed her with another man on multiple occasions in circumstances that suggested an intimate relationship. Patricia Wells jumped up. Objection, Your Honor. Speculation. Sustained. Mr. Turner, please stick to what you observed directly. I observed my wife kissing another man at her place of business. I observed them entering and leaving the building together after hours on multiple occasions. And who was this other man? Brad Vance, honey, who owns a gym in town. Emily's face went pale. She whispered something urgent to her lawyer. When Emily took the stand, she tried to paint me as a controlling husband who was trying to destroy her business out of spite. She denied the affair, claiming that Brad was just a friend who'd been helping her with business advice. Mr. Vance has experience in small business management, she testified. He was simply offering guidance during a difficult time. And this guidance required private meetings after business hours? Janet asked during cross-examination. We discussed sensitive financial matters. I didn't want my employees to worry about the salon's stability. Mrs. Turner, are you romantically involved with Brad Vance? Emily hesitated just a moment too long. No, I'm not. Janet smiled. No further questions. The final witness was Brad himself, who'd been subpoenaed despite his obvious reluctance to appear. He was nervous, sweating through his expensive shirt, his usual cocky demeanor nowhere to be found. Under oath, he admitted to spending time at the salon after hours, admitted to having dinner with Emily on multiple occasions, but denied any romantic involvement. We're just friends, he insisted. I was helping her through a difficult divorce. Mr. Vance, Janet asked, have you ever kissed Mrs. Turner? We may have. It was just a friendly, yes or no, Mr. Vance? Yes, but it didn't mean anything. The courtroom was dead silent. Emily was staring at the floor, her face burning red. Franklin looked like he wanted to disappear. Judge Chen deliberated for 20 minutes before returning with her decision. Based on the evidence presented, I find that Mr. Turner made substantial financial contributions to his wife's business with the reasonable expectation of partnership or repayment. I also find that Mrs. Turner has engaged in extramarital conduct that contributed to the breakdown of the marriage. She awarded me $45,000, my original investment plus interest, and ordered the house to be sold with proceeds split equally. Emily would have to buy me out or find the money elsewhere. Outside the courthouse, Emily was in tears. Franklin was furious, and Brad was nowhere to be found. I felt vindicated, but not victorious. This was just the beginning. As I walked to my truck, Patricia Wells caught up with me. "This isn't over, Smith," she said quietly. "Emily's going to appeal, and she's going to make your life hell in the process." I looked back at Emily, still crying on the courthouse steps while her father tried to console her. "Let her try," I said. "I'm just getting started." Emily didn't appeal the divorce decree, but she did something worse. She declared war. Within a week of the judgment, I started hearing rumors around town. I was supposedly abusive, controlling, vindictive. I'd supposedly threatened Emily and Brad, bothered customers at the salon, tried to sabotage her business. None of it was true, but truth didn't matter in a town that loved gossip more than facts. The rumors reached their peak when I walked into Murphy's Tavern one Friday night to find the place unusually quiet. Ray was at his usual stool, but he didn't wave me over. Tommy the bartender gave me a polite nod, but nothing more. I ordered a beer and waited. Finally, Mike from Ray's construction crew spoke up. "Smith, I gotta ask you something, and I want a straight answer." "Shoot. Did you threaten Emily? Because word around town is that you've been stalking her, making her life hell." I took a long pull of my beer, looking around the room at faces that had been friendly just weeks before. "Mike, in the 8 years I've been married to Emily, have you ever known me to raise my voice to a woman? To threaten anyone? No, but have you ever known me to go back on my word or lie about business? No. Then why would you believe I'd start now?" The room was quiet for a moment. Then Ray spoke up. "Because Emily's been telling everyone who'll listen that you're dangerous. She's scared, Smith. Says you've been driving by the salon, calling and hanging up, following her around town." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Emily wasn't just fighting the divorce. She was trying to destroy my reputation, my relationships, my life in this town. "Ray, I've driven by the salon exactly twice since the divorce was filed. Once to collect my tools, once to check on equipment I'm legally responsible for maintaining. I haven't called Emily except through my lawyer, and I sure as hell haven't followed her anywhere." Then why is she saying these things? Because she's trying to make herself the sufferer. And apparently it's working. I finished my beer in silence and left. Outside in the parking lot, I called Janet. "Emily's spreading lies about me," I told her, "claiming I'm bothering her. Can you prove their lies?" "How do you prove a negative? How do I prove I haven't been stalking someone?" "This is a problem, Smith. If she files a restraining order, it could affect the property settlement." That's when I knew Emily's real strategy. She couldn't afford to pay me what the court had ordered, so she was trying to make me the villain. If she could get a restraining order, if she could paint me as unstable and dangerous, maybe she could get the judgment overturned. I wasn't going to let that happen. The next morning, I drove to the salon. It was a Saturday, which meant Emily would be there with a full schedule of clients. I parked directly across the street in full view of the front windows and waited. It took 15 minutes. Emily spotted my truck and immediately pulled out her phone. 5 minutes later, a police cruiser pulled up behind me. Officer Dave McKay was a decent guy who'd known me for years. He approached my truck with a resigned expression. "Smith, what are you doing here? Sitting in my truck on a public street? Emily called, says you've been bothering her." "Dave, I'm parked legally on a public road. I haven't gotten out of my truck, haven't approached the building, haven't spoken to anyone. How is that harassment?" Dave looked uncomfortable. "She says you've been doing this for weeks. This is the first time I've been here in over a month. Check your call logs if you don't believe me." Dave sighed. "Look, Smith, I believe you, but she's filed a formal complaint. I have to ask you to move along. Am I under arrest? No. Am I being charged with anything? No, but then I'm going to sit here for a few more minutes and then leave on my own. And Dave, next time Emily calls with a complaint about me, I want you to document exactly when and where she claims I was bothering her, because I'm going to start documenting where I actually am." I sat there for exactly 10 more minutes, then drove away. But not before I saw Emily watching from the salon window, her phone pressed to her ear, probably calling her lawyer, to report my threatening behavior. That afternoon, I received a call from Linda Hartwell. "Smith, we need to talk." "About what?" "About ending this war between you and Emily. It's hurting everyone." We agreed to meet at a coffee shop on the edge of town, neutral territory. Linda arrived looking nervous and overdressed, like she was heading to a job interview rather than a casual conversation. "Emily's falling apart," she said without preamble. "The stress is ending her. Can't you just take the 20,000 and walk away?" "Linda, A judge awarded me $45,000. Why would I take less? Because you're destroying her life. She can't afford that kind of money. Then she shouldn't have cheated on me. Linda leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. She made a mistake, Smith. One mistake. Does that really justify ruining her entire future? One mistake? I laughed bitterly. Linda, she's been screwing Brad Vance for months. She humiliated me in public, lied to me, tried to steal my money, and now she's spreading lies about me all over town. That's not one mistake. That's a pattern. She's desperate. People do crazy things when they're desperate. Yeah, they do. And Emily's about to find out just how crazy. I stood to leave, but Linda grabbed my arm. Smith, please, if you have any feelings left for her at all, I don't. The next week, Emily made her final play. She organized a grand reopening event at the salon, complete with champagne, catered food, and half the town in attendance. It was supposed to be a celebration of her independence, a declaration that she was thriving despite her divorce. I wasn't invited, but I came anyway. I walked into that salon at 8 o'clock, wearing my best suit and carrying a manila folder. The party stopped cold. Conversations died mid-sentence. Emily went white as a sheet. Smith, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. What are you doing here? I brought you something. I handed her the folder. Consider it a going-away present. Emily opened the folder with trembling hands. Inside were copies of financial records, bank statements, and a detailed audit of the salon's books. The audit that showed Linda had been embezzling money for over a year. What is this? Emily asked, but her voice suggested she already knew. It's proof that your business partner has been stealing from you. $53,000 over 14 months. Check register alterations, fake vendor payments, cash deposits that never made it to the bank account. The room was dead silent. Linda, who'd been standing near the refreshment table, looked like she was about to be sick. That's impossible, Emily said. But she was already reading through the documents, her face growing paler with each page. Linda's been very clever about it, I continued, loud enough for everyone to hear. Small amounts, spread out over time, always with plausible explanations. But when you add it all up, it's quite a sum. Certainly enough to explain why the salon's been struggling financially. Emily turned to look at Linda, who was backing toward the door. Linda? Emily's voice was small, confused. Is this true? Linda's response was to bolt. She pushed through the crowd and ran out of the salon, leaving behind her purse, her coat, and any pretense of innocence. The party was over. Guests began filing out, whispering among themselves about this latest drama. Emily stood in the middle of her salon, surrounded by champagne glasses and catered food, holding proof that her best friend had been robbing her blind. How did you find this? She asked me. I'm good with numbers, always have been. When I was putting together my case for the divorce, I noticed some irregularities in the salon's finances. So I dug deeper. Why are you showing me this? I looked around the salon, the business I'd helped her build, the dream I'd supported, even when it was failing. Because despite everything you've done to me, I don't want to see you destroyed by someone else's greed. Emily started to cry then, not the angry tears I'd seen during our fights, but the broken sobs of someone who'd lost everything. Her marriage, her money, her best friend, her reputation, all gone. I'm sorry, she whispered. Smith, I'm so sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. But it was too late for apologies. Too late for explanations or excuses. The damage was done and we both knew it. I walked out of that salon and never looked back. The final confrontation came 2 weeks later on a cold December night outside Murphy's Tavern. I was leaving after having dinner with Ray. Our friendship had survived Emily's lies, though it had taken some time to rebuild trust, when I found Brad Vance waiting by my truck. He looked terrible. His gym had lost half its members once word got around about his affair with Emily. His perfect hair was disheveled, his expensive clothes wrinkled. The cocky confidence that had once defined him was nowhere to be found. We need to talk, he said. No, we don't. I tried to walk around him, but he stepped in front of me. You destroyed my life, he said, his voice shaking with rage. My business is ruined. My reputation is shot. All because you couldn't handle losing your wife to a better man. I stopped and looked at him, really looked. This was the man Emily had chosen over me. This was the prize she'd thrown away our marriage for. Brad, I didn't destroy your life. You did that all by yourself when you decided to sleep with another man's wife. She was leaving you anyway. We just fell in love. Love? I laughed. Is that what you call it? Because from where I stood, it looked like two selfish people who wanted what they couldn't have. Brad's hands clenched into fists. You think you're so much better than me, don't you? With your money and your business and your working class hero act. But you're just a bitter old man who couldn't satisfy his wife. That's when he made his mistake. He took a swing at me. I'd been in my share of fights growing up. Blue-collar neighborhoods teach you how to handle yourself, and 20 years of physical labor had kept me strong. Brad was all show muscles and gym posturing. I caught his punch, twisted his arm behind his back, and slammed him face first against my truck. Let me explain something to you, I said quietly, my mouth close to his ear. I didn't steal your girlfriend. I didn't ruin your business. I didn't spread rumors about you or lie to your friends. All I did was tell the truth in a court of law. If that destroyed your life, maybe you should have thought about that before you started screwing my wife. I released him and stepped back. Brad stumbled, caught himself against the truck, and turned to face me. His nose was bleeding, his shirt torn. This isn't over, he said, and it is, and it was. Brad left town 3 days later, his gym closed and his debts unpaid. I heard he moved to Florida, where he was trying to start over with a new identity and a fresh set of lies. Emily lasted another month before she gave up too. The salon closed after she couldn't make rent, the embezzlement scandal having scared away most of her clients. She moved back in with Franklin, who'd spent a small fortune on lawyers and had nothing to show for it but a daughter, who'd become the town's cautionary tale. Linda was arrested for embezzlement and fraud. She plea bargained her way to 18 months in minimum security and full restitution, though Emily never saw a penny of the money. As for me, I got my $45,000 when Emily sold her car, her jewelry, and everything else of value she owned. I also got something more valuable, my reputation back. The truth has a way of surfacing, and once people understood what had really happened, the whispers and accusations stopped. 6 months after the divorce was final, I sold my house and bought a larger building for my business. Northeast Climate Solutions was expanding into 3 new states, and I needed the space. I also needed the distance from memories that no amount of money could erase. On my last night in town, I stopped by Murphy's Tavern for a farewell drink. Ray was there, along with most of the old crowd. They bought me rounds and told stories and pretended this was just another Friday night instead of an ending. You going to miss this place? Ray asked as the evening wound down. I looked around the bar at the faces I'd known for years, at the small town that had been my home for so long. Parts of it, I said, but it's time to move on. What about Emily? You ever think about what might have been? I finished my beer and set the glass on the bar. Emily made her choice and I made mine. The only difference is I can live with mine. I walked out of Murphy's Tavern and climbed into my truck for the last time as a resident of that town. As I drove through the empty streets, past the closed salon and the shuttered gym, past the house where Emily was probably lying awake wondering how everything had gone so wrong, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. The funny thing about cold air is that it always rises when it's heated, just like the truth. Emily had tried to bury me under lies and manipulation, tried to make me the villain in her story. But truth has weight, and lies are just hot air. In the end, the truth rose to the surface, and everyone could see it clearly. I drove out of town that night and never looked back. There was nothing left for me there, except ghosts and regrets, and I'd had enough of both to last a lifetime. 6 months later, I received a wedding invitation in the mail. Ray was getting married to a woman he'd met at a job site, and he wanted me to be his best man. I drove back for the weekend, stood beside my oldest friend as he promised to love and honor his bride, and gave a toast about friendship and loyalty and the importance of keeping your word. After the reception, Ray and I sat on his back porch, drinking beer and watching the stars. You ever think about getting married again? He asked. Maybe someday, when I meet someone who understands that marriage is a partnership, not a competition. Think Emily learned anything from all this? I shrugged. I hope so, but it's not my problem anymore. And it wasn't. Emily Turner was part of my past, a chapter in my life that was closed and filed away. I'd moved on to bigger things, better things, a future that didn't include betrayal and lies and small-town drama. The last I heard, Emily was working as a receptionist at a dental office in the next town over. living with her father, and trying to rebuild her life one day at a time. Linda had served her sentence and moved to another state. Brad had supposedly married a wealthy widow in Tampa and was calling himself a fitness consultant. I wish them all well, in the abstract way you wish well for people you used to know. Their successes and failures were no longer my concern. As for me, I built my business into a regional empire, bought a house on a lake, and learned to find satisfaction in work well done and promises kept. I dated occasionally, but never seriously, content with my independence and my hard-won peace of mind. Sometimes, late at night when the house was quiet and the lake was still, I'd think about the man I used to be, the one who believed that love could conquer all, that marriage meant forever, that good intentions were enough to build a life on. That man was gone, replaced by someone harder and wiser, and infinitely more careful with his trust. I mourned him sometimes, the way you mourn any lost innocence. But I didn't regret his passing. The world is full of people who will take advantage of kindness, who will mistake generosity for weakness, who will use your best intentions against you. Emily had taught me that lesson in the most painful way possible. But she'd also taught me something else, that I was stronger than I knew, more resilient than I'd ever imagined, and capable of surviving betrayals that would have destroyed a lesser man. In the end, that knowledge was worth more than the $45,000 I'd won in court. It was worth more than the house, the business, the reputation I'd fought so hard to preserve. It was worth everything. The cold air had risen, carrying away the lies and leaving only truth behind. And in that truth, I'd found something Emily could never take from me, my self-respect. That was enough. It had to be the end.